Welcome, servant class miners, servant class merfolk, and Cyril, is that you? This is episode 529 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 14th of December 2024, and featuring the animated reconstruction of the Underwater Menace, written by Jeffrey Orm, animated by BBC Studios, and starring Patrick Troughton as the Doctor, Michael Craze as Ben Jackson, Anna K. Wills as Polly Wright, and Fraser Hines as Jamie McCrimmon. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I think I've become addicted to chori queso dip. With me are the thoughts and reviews of Aaron Romeo Moon Burke, who's unable to make it due to change in work schedule this week, and our co-host and acting technical director, Alex Firehart.
Hello.
How are things going on your end?
Basically it's just been trying not to melt. It has been like astronomical. Like, at least, I mean, the worst part about where I live in Australia is less the heat and more the humidity.
It's got you.
It's like
that's right, because most of the population of Australia is along the coast, right?
Yeah, and even then, I live in North Queensland, which is much closer to the equator than like I'm closer to the equator. People who live in Victoria are closer to Antarctica, so it's.
I should have known the past couple of weeks are the first time that I've turned off the heat and turned off the air conditioner and turned on the heat, which I should have known in the land down under meant the opposite was happening.
Yeah, like I've only my normal shifts are only 4 hours long, but even then, having to wear admittedly a fairly thin but effectively a polo shirt and long pants for work is just even in an air conditioned building, there's just more people than usual, so there's more body heat, and it's just it's taken it out of me.
We have our Christmas shopping season in, as it's getting cold. You have your Christmas shopping season, I'm sure, right as the heat is ramping up.
Right, and my parents are gone for the week, so to save money, instead of getting a taxi home, yesterday I had to, not so much had to, but I was like, okay, screw it. My home state has instituted a thing more recently, and now it's officially been made permanent, but we'll see how long, because the Conservative government are who made it permanent. For public transport that I guess I was going to say that falls under a certain thing, but I guess it's still public transport either way. Falls under, so long as buses and that fall under a thing called TransLink, tickets are now 50 cents per journey. So, and the funny thing was, is the bus I got on, the guy was like, oh yeah, we don't have one of those tap on, tap off things yet, so just get on. Because I don't think I had 50 cents on me. And even if I did, I would have ran out very quickly of pocket change. So, and he was just like, they haven't even given us those yet, so I'm not. So he was like, I'm not going to turn people away when it's already that cheap a fare anyway, so who gives a shit?
Talk about turning people away over nonsense. So my bus, my local bus, it's $1 to ride the bus, and if you're on campus, which is a 2 miles, maybe even larger,
Mm.
by like in either direction area. Like it's a decent sized chunk of the city. Um, it's free because
Mm.
there's an agreement with the school.
Yeah.
There's a stop about 50 feet away from the entrance to the campus. Like there's a big
Mm.
sign, "Welcome to Campus Town."
Yeah.
And if you're at that stop, 50 feet away from the entrance to the school,
Mm.
and maybe it's probably more like 20, 30 feet, to be honest.
Yeah.
The bus drivers will be like, "Oh, you need your ID or you need $1." And I'm like, I like that's nitpicking.
Yeah, like
That's seriously
yeah.
nitpicking.
Like I don't know why someone would be waiting at a university stop if they're not. I mean, I guess to be fair, someone could be visiting someone, but even then, you more likely drove there.
Mm-hmm. But it's if they walk a block to the next stop is free. That's my point.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's really no reason to be that petty.
Yeah. But yeah, like the one downside is that I had to wait around for an hour after work just to catch the bus. Whereas a taxi would have got me home fairly quick. And also a taxi would have gotten me pretty much all the way, whereas it's very hot and very muggy. And like it kind of worked out because I needed to do a tiny bit of grocery shopping anyway, that it dropped me off at the supermarket like a decent distance away. So I went in there, grabbed stuff, and then walked home. But I was like, ooh, I was chafing pretty badly by the time, like already, and it was even worse when I got home. It was just like, shit, I might have to start like, if I keep this up, I'm probably gonna have to like, bring a change of clothes to change into after I finish work, so I'm at least not wearing long pants on the walk home. I don't know if I got sunburnt, but it wouldn't shock me if I did. It was thankfully fairly overcast on the walk back, but it's mainly just an annoying walk because I've got to go through a lot of winding streets rather than a straight line. So that was like, oh, I'm already kind of regretting this, but it's still cheaper than a taxi. uh
See, on my end, I've mostly wrapped up the semester, so I have grading to do, but I have somebody who's helping grading who I think is going to do all of it, but I'm just kind of, I'm not just trying to be lazy, so I'm like, if I have time and energy to help with it, I will. I have learned over the years that I am just not a fast grader. I'm much like I think it's because I put too much effort into the like reading and giving substantive feedback to papers. So the downside is like I'm not that person who can grade 4 papers in an hour, no matter how short they are. Um, so even if I try to do half, I will probably do the vast minority of the papers. But I did give feedback to everybody who submitted a week early to get feedback. So the part that I'm good at is done. I have one final left to do that I think getting it started is the hardest part. So I just really need to buckle down either tomorrow or Monday and just really invest some time into that.
mm.
And then otherwise, I'm pretty much in for a quiet month.
Hmm.
All right. Somehow I minimized all my windows because because I was responding to a Reddit post. That's why. All right. On tonight's show, we have our selected birthdays. We have one lost story. We have our Doctor Who news. No geek talk. I'm pretty sure has yeah. So no geek talk. We're all like almost have something. I think. Then we have our episode summary, our discussion of the animation, and our review, final thoughts, and ratings. We don't need a historical fact check because there's only one historical fact in the episode.
Yeah.
So on to Alex with the birthdays.
Yep. So, first up, on the 1st of December, we have Dennis Spooner, who was the writer of 5 First Doctor stories and the story editor for most of season 2. Would have been 92, but died in 1986 at the age of 53. Also on the 1st of December, we have Kelly A. Manners, who is a producer for Torchwood Miracle Day, turned 69. On the 7th of December, we have Wendy Padbury, who played Zoe Harriet in seasons 5 and 6, plus work for Big Finish, turned 77. On the 8th of December, we have Jenny Linden, who played Barbara in the Aru Doctor Who movies, also turned 77. On the 9th of December, we have Eric Sayward, who is the Doctor Who story editor from 1982 to 1986 and the writer of 5 stories, turned 86. Also on the 9th of December, we have Waris Hussein, who is the director of An Unearthly Child and Marco Polo, turned 86 as well. On the 10th of December, we have Anthony Coburn, who was the writer of An Unearthly Child. He would have been 97, but died in 1977 at the age of 49. On the 12th of December, we have Sarah Sutton, who played Nissa of Traken from 81 to 83, plus work for Big Finish afterwards, turned 63. And finally, on the 13th of December, we have Hamish Wilson, who played the rearranged Jamie in The Mind Robber, who would have been 82 but died in 2020 at the age of 77. So happy birthday to Dennis, Kelly, Wendy, Jenny, Eric, Waris, Anthony, Sarah, and Hamish.
All right, in less happy news, Arnold Yarrow, the oldest surviving Doctor Who cast member, has died at the age of 104. Yarrow played Belal in the third Doctor story Death to the Daleks in 1974, thanks to having met Barry Letts in his work in the theater, where he worked in weekly shows starting in the 1940s, although of course this did not prevent him from serving in Asia during World War II. Yarrow first appeared on television in the 1950s, and would appear in such shows as London's Burning, One by One, The Chinese Detective, Wainwright's Law, The One Din Line, or Onedin Line, I'm honestly not sure, Dr. Finlay's Casebook, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Coronation Street, and others. I think that was like half the list that Doctor Who News had. He also wrote for several shows and was a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company. Yarrow is survived by his 1-year-old brother, 100-year-old brother, not 1-year-old, and by numerous nibblings. The title of oldest surviving cast member now goes to 100-year-old Laurie Webb, who played Mr. Alice in The Three Doctors. Moving on to episode news. First off, we have our update on the Christmas broadcasts. Of course, the main event, Joy to the World, will air on BBC One, iPlayer, and Disney Plus on Christmas Day at 5:10 Greenwich Mean Time. So the first source we had only said BBC One, but Coltbox says iPlayer Disney Plus will be at the same time, 5:10 GMT. I guess they learned their lesson with the this past season airing earlier on streaming and all of Britain taking offense to it. The War Games will air on BBC 4 on the 23rd at 9 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Hopefully that means we'll see some. I don't think we're going to see it on Disney Plus or Tubi or BritBox or any of those, unfortunately. Doctor Who at the Proms will air on BBC on Christmas Eve at 4:10 p.m. And I keep seeing Big Finish photos popping up. I don't know
Yeah,
if
sorry
you're
about
trying
that.
to do something else. Okay.
I forgot. I realized in hindsight that I hadn't put them in, so I'm putting them in now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they just keep popping up.
Yeah.
Doctor Who at the Proms, which I'm still not sure what that consists of, but if you're interested, will air on BBC 2. I left out the 2 in my script, but I remembered it. On Christmas Eve at 4:10 p.m. So that's all of the Doctor Who Christmas broadcasts. We also have a new trailer for Joy to the World, which features the Doctor yelling at a future version of himself, probably 30 minutes or 45 minutes in the future version of himself. I'm noticing right now that on the promotional image, the red in his I like you transition just as I'm looking at it. Like it looks a lot redder in the still images compared to how brown it looks in the actual footage.
Yeah.
So very, very much color corrected to look more festive, I guess.
Probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you watch the trailer?
I did not end up having time to.
Mm. So yeah, not a huge amount happens in it, but the main thing that was new that as far as I could tell, there were a couple new characters, but we didn't see enough to actually know who they were. But we see the Doctor yelling at himself, and he's like, you always have to be mysterious. This is why everyone leaves you." So clearly he's kind of hurt from not having his current companion with him.
Wow, in hindsight, I'm realizing I did watch it, but it's just I was focused on getting everything set up that I forgot.
Mm-hmm. I think the main contribution, other than seeing the fact that the Doctor gets a chance to yell at himself, is we get to see some more of like the locations that are going to appear, which we don't know how if any of these locations are going to be for more than 30 seconds or not.
Yeah.
The whole thing about it, like there being like travel between different Christmases, like it actually we knew that from interviews, but that actually like is mentioned in the trailer. So I did see, before watching this trailer, I did see some people pissed off at it. They're like, "Oh, why does the Doctor have existential angst? Isn't that why David Tennant is having tea with Donna's family to get over all of the angst?" And I'm like, no, that's to get rid of the centuries of accumulated angst. His companion just left him, so he has new angst.
Well, I mean, even then, he's got new angst just from his first series alone. So, or season alone, because, like, I mean, the one thing that made me just be like, was like, while I have no issue with the Doctor crying, good lord, have they made Shooty cry in like most episodes he's done so far. Like, I get it, he's very good at it, but it's like, it kind of lessens the impact when he's doing it all the time.
Fair. Yeah, the same thing could probably be labeled at the writers of David Tennant's episodes. I will say this trailer definitely, you could tell it was written by the same person who wrote Curse of Fatal Death. Like, there's very much, I'll explain later.
Yeah. Which I guess the Christmas specials were usually somewhat more lighthearted, at least insofar as at least being kind of silly. So It kind of
Mhm.
fits.
Right.
Like I forget if Moffat's were necessarily, at least as far as during his run as showrunner, but this is RTD as showrunner with Moffat writing, so I could see that
Mhm.
being what influenced
Um,
Moffat to be a bit more silly.
so Moffat's first Christmas special is he kind of leaves Amy and Rory to go on their honeymoon while he takes Sardik to all travels through all of Sardik's life and
Hmm.
yeah, uh, I mean at the very least it plays fast and loose with the rules of causality.
Yeah.
Um, the next one is the one where he shows up to the woman's house, and I do not very much remember the details of that, other
Hmm.
than this is not Fairyland. Grow up, Fairyland looks completely different.
Yeah.
Um, his third Christmas special, I think, was that the Snowman,
Uh,
and
I think so. Because then
and
after,
then and
because yeah, and then after that, it's like
then it was the
hus-
Regeneration.
well, yeah, it's like Husbands of River Song, and then the Return of Doctor Mysterio, and then um and then Time of the Doctor, I think. Well, was
That's out of you just did Peter Capaldi before Matt Smith.
oh
Unless you're
right,
mixing up
yeah,
Twice Upon a Time with Time of the Doctor.
right, yeah, probably. I guess
But
I
yeah,
was
I think
just
he did have the saying that. I think he has written the most Christmas episodes for Doctor Who at this point.
hmm. I mean, by virtue of the fact that if you only go by Christmas rather than holiday, Chibnall wrote none. So
Right,
and
yeah.
like
Well, yeah.
and and,
I I'm
and
counting. I guess counting the whole week as Christmas, but
right.
even still, Chibnall didn't write that many.
Yeah, like the
If you
only
count all
reason
holiday, yeah. If you count all holidays, RTD and Chibnall each have an Easter special,
mm,
uh, and so forth.
yeah, and like I guess the funny thing is like even Twice Upon a Time he only did because Chibnall said he wasn't going to do a Christmas special. And
Mm.
Moffat was like, "No, we have to have a Christmas special," so he wrote that.
And that gave us David Bradley as the Doctor.
Hmm.
Moving on to classic episode news, the season 3 story, The Savages, which sees Stephen Taylor's departure, has been announced as the next animated reconstruction. The serial, which is often caught in rights issues, will be animated by BBC Studios and is expected to be released in the spring.
Hmm. Which I almost wonder if
Um,
that's. I was gonna talk about this anyway, but I wonder if because I didn't realize that that's why you were surprised that this was happening. I was like, oh, so that's probably why it is finally happening. Is whatever rights issues must have been finally resolved in some way. Like it might even just be that maybe this
mm,
will only ever get um like home and possibly potentially digital releases, but not
mhm.
streaming releases.
I mean, to be fair, the rights issues I think are more along the lines of like we don't want to pay whatever the estate is requiring for simply
Right.
mentioning the episode. Like, like
Ah.
talking about the Planet of the Savages would probably require some amount of payment that's just not worth it most of the time. Whereas
Right.
like a whole release maybe it may be
Mm.
better in the cost benefit analysis.
Right.
But I don't really know the details. I just know, like, for
Yeah.
example, Big Finish never talks about what happened to Steven. He just
Mm.
like the Savages happened, and then
Yeah.
Steven had no adventures for decades apparently. And then I think there's some stories set like when he's no longer there, but he won't talk about what happened while he was there.
I mean,
So,
maybe just the estate finally like backed off somewhat now that they've got
mhm,
like the this will be like all three stories that this writer did are now like out there in some form because I forget what was it? Because it was this, the Macroterra, and God, I forget what the other one was. I even said so, like earlier. The War Machines. That's it. So that the War Machines being the only one that fully survives, and then the Savages and the Macroterra were the other ones that writer did.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess, in hindsight, that probably explains why RTD has said in hindsight that the giant crabs in that one story that I'm forgetting the name
Gridlock.
of, Gridlock, that's it. He's like said that those are macra, but it's never explicitly stated in the episode. Like maybe
So
that's
I
why.
think in the credits of that episode it says Macra created by, because I've noticed that when I'm doing the birthdays, it'll be like, oh, this person has one extra credit in Gridlock, and the credit is Macra created by.
I guess.
Which, and I'm not avoiding their name on purpose.
Right.
I just don't know it off the top of my head, and I don't know. I don't know if maybe if I open the article, it'll tell me who wrote it.
But even then, given that they're not named like in the episode, and the Doctor's like, "Oh, I've faced these before" or something, because it's such like a blink and you'll miss it thing, that like maybe that was intentional. Like maybe they were supposed to play a bigger role, but with how the state was being at the time, maybe that meant they had to reduce it to just kind of a cameo, and him pointing out after the fact that they're macro.
Funny enough, the Doctor Who news article does not say who wrote the Savages either. Sorry, not intentionally ignoring their name. And our last bit of news is our Big Finish releases. On December 4th was the Paternoster Gang, Trespassers 3, No Place Like Home. Written by Nev McIntosh, Dan Starkey, Matt Fitton, and Ken Bentley. Starring Nev McIntosh as Madame Vastra, Dan Starkey as Strax. And I had to go into the cast list for these others, but it felt wrong to only include the ones listed on the Big Finish website. Katrin Stewart as Jenny Flint, and Michael Troutman as the Doctor. And now that I'm looking at the cover, I see the cover acknowledges them all as the stars. It's just whoever codes the Big Finish's website is a gatekeeper. On December 10th, Big Finish released 8th Doctor Adventures, Deadly Strangers, written by Matthew Jacobs, Lisa McMullen, Lauren Mooney, and Stuart Pringle. Starring Paul McGann as the Doctor, India Fisher as Charlotte Pollard, and I'm really wondering which era Charlie this is. And Jay Griffiths as Lady Audacity. I don't know if this is pronounced Montague or Montague within the context of the story, but it's one of those.
Given the story is being written by the British, I would say Montague.
I was gonna say, like, it's a French name, so it would be Montague. But yeah, the British often would like it's funny because they'll use more French words than Americans, but then they'll pronounce it in a decidedly un-French way, which was at some point an unintentional decision to distance the language from the French. But I'm not going into English language history. We'd be here for another hour. And then finally, on December 12th, they released Bernie Summerfield Volume 8, The Eternity Club 4, written by Tim Foley, starring Lisa Bowerman as Bernie Summerfield, and Nicholas Grace as Secretary Pym. And I see Dan Starkey as a Centauran, but I did not know that was going to be a prominent cast member, so I didn't see if... looks like Stark, but that doesn't mean it's Stark. In fact, probably not Stark. I mean, Strax. I don't know why I'm saying Stark. Oh, Starkey.
Yeah.
Starkey and Strax are two similar names. And yeah, I actually need to step away for a minute before doing the summary because I guess I just had too much horchata with my dinner. So I'll be right back.
I guess just to fill the space, I'll throw out there that with Deadly Strangers, I'm it didn't click at first because at first I was just concentrating on the snake. But then I looked at Charlie's eyes and I'm like, oh, this is definitely supposed to be a Mara story. So that'll be interesting. In hindsight, it would have been, if we had Geek Talk, I probably could have just gone straight to one of mine to fill the air, but oh well. Just in hindsight, we're done with that, so I'll go back to the title card.
Oh, I should also say, before we're going into the summary, if you're a Dragon Ball fan that's waiting for the dub of Daima or ignoring Daima, it just dropped a big lore drop in the most recent episode. So if you're waiting to watch it, you're going to be spoiled if you're on social media. So just watch it. Also, I just saw something saying that apparently the new management at Warner Bros. Has decided to cancel Sesame Street. So if that's true, fuck that person.
What the fuck?
That's not really sci-fi fantasy, but it's adjacent enough. All right, let's see if I can do this summary with no notes. Go ahead, give me a countdown.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, the Doctor and the TARDIS crew, including the new member Jamie, arrive on Earth, and at first they're trying to determine where they are. They do find some jewelry that came from the 1968 Olympics, which suggests to them that it's Earth in the 1970s. And based on some volcanic rock, they're not in Britain. That's about as far as they get before they are taken prisoner by people who actually, turns out, are Atlantans living on an underwater continent. They're about to be sacrificed, but the Doctor manages to convince. He notices that there is food that could only have been created by this great scientist who was researching, I guess, making food in situations of scarcity from the ocean or something. That backstory is not super explained, but the Doctor recognizes this and uses it to his advantage. He manages to stop the sacrifice, which instead results in the companions kind of being taken for slave labor. Jamie and Ben are sent to work in mines, and Polly is going to be operated on and turned into a fish person, although the Doctor doesn't know this right away. The Doctor, meanwhile, is speaking with the scientist, whose name is Zeroff, and realizes that Zeroff basically came to a position of power by his promises to return Atlantis to the surface. But his method of doing that is to drain the ocean into the Earth's mantle, which is going to possibly destroy the crust of the Earth and doom humanity. So the Doctor realizes this shit needs to stop. He also interferes with Polly's operation. And there's also a servant named Ara who has been getting picked on by the guards and hates Zeroff. Also realizes that the Doctor is nice and decides to help Polly escape. Ben and Jamie meet with Sean and Jacko, who are just, two other people who've been taken as slaves. But they happen to be planning an escape, so Ben and Jamie join in on this. They meet up with Polly and begin, working on their plans to escape. Meanwhile, the Doctor has been meeting with different people, including the leader of Atlantis, trying to basically, stop Zeroff, stop having him be a super powerful person, because he's going to use that power to, destroy humanity. However, they don't really believe him, which almost leads to the Doctor being executed, along with the priest that he's collaborating with, which I believe is the one named Ramo. Yes, it is Ramo, or possibly Ramo. But the companions manage to disrupt the execution, saving the Doctor. This leads to a lot of walking around through back tunnels and such, as Zeroff stages a coup and takes over, kills the leader, takes over Atlantis. Hey, didn't we see this like 2 or 3 episodes ago? But that's besides the point. So the Doctor, in a final bid to stop Zeroff from his plan, decides to flood Atlantis, which of course causes an evacuation of everybody to the surface. In the midst of all this, there's been a plan that involves telling the fish people who were responsible for basically farming food for Atlantis to go on strike. And I'm not entirely sure if we ever see what comes of the fish people. But the regular people who have not been turned into fish evacuate. Zeroff, I'm pretty sure, drowns in the midst of trying to process his plan. And the TARDIS crew, along with everybody else, escape. And they make it to the TARDIS and leave. The end, and I hope I didn't miss any important plots.
I did stop it a second or two late, but you did that in about 4 minutes 50 seconds.
Okay, yeah. So if I missed any important plots, they were not 5 minutes important.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, like with, there was kind of a lead into, I honestly forget what the next story after this is, but of like, oh no, we're crashing.
I think it's the moon base.
That yeah. Oh yeah.
In my mind, I always think it goes straight from Highlanders to moon base, but this is in between.
Yeah, it's like they're all kind of, I forget if it's shown in the animation, but they're like, oh no, we're gonna crash or something, or like we're getting pulled towards something.
I didn't even count the cliffhanger as being important, but yeah, that does happen. And now I just want to see if my own memory is right. So yeah, so we have Power, Highlanders, Underwater Menace, Moonbase, Macra Terror, Faceless Ones, and of course then Ben and Polly leave. Oh yeah, so Savages to Macra Terror is a very short span as far as writers go. It's the end of season 3 to the midpoint of season 4. All right. Animation. What thoughts do you have on the animation?
I will say I much prefer, like, as simplistic, like, Flash animation effectively as this is, kinda. I do prefer this. I mean, there are setbacks that watching the surviving episodes point out of how simplistic this animation is, which, to be fair, the BBC was never going to give them decent enough money to have, like, story-specific costumes or whatever in some cases. Like, the funny thing was watching the surviving episodes and realizing that Jamie's outfit's wrong. That, like, he's in like the turtleneck sweater, whereas he should be in his Highlander gear. Highland gear, because he's just come off his debut story. So like, he should be in exactly what he was wearing prior. So he's wearing a lot more, but for budget reasons, I assume, and because they already had this outfit, they were like, yeah, we're just gonna reuse that. Sort of like how I think in the Macroterra one, Polly just kind of starts with her hair cut short, even though there's like supposed to be a scene where she gets it cut short or something. So that kind of is a thing. And then you get stuff like they've given Zaroff a much, I don't want to say flashier outfit, but like having that big coat is a thing that he doesn't have. Which it's like, it is a nice touch. Like it fits. But it is kind of funny watching the surviving episodes and realizing, oh, he's basically just dressed like a doctor in a way.
Yeah, in the live action, he's got like this theatrical cape you might see from a Shakespearean production. Which I mean, well, sorry, I don't want to go into talking about it, so go ahead, continue.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, he does end up with like a cape at one point in this, but like in this, they've just given him like a coat or like a cloak or something that he's wearing the whole time. And it's so funny that like you made his outfit more, not so much ornate, but you made his outfit like have an extra layer that it technically didn't. So you kind of made more work for yourselves by giving him that. And I feel like some touches I'm like, well, yeah, this works a bit better. Like I like the changes to like the headdresses being more like looking like massive shells. Whereas in the surviving, they look a bit sillier, and I don't know if there's still supposed to be shells, and it's just the budget they had was so low that they just couldn't realize it properly. But you know, and they have all like these frilly bits sticking out, which to be fair works for what they're going for, but it's also like, yeah, I'm down for just it being basically a big shell. Although the other funny thing was the decision to make them not have any eyebrows at all for the Atlanteans, when at least the men in the surviving live action episodes have really bushy eyebrows. Which like, I don't know. I almost kind of prefer that visually to them not having any, because the idea is they're not supposed to be fish people. It's like there are fish people, but like they're just supposed to be people who were surface dwellers who, you know, are now trapped under the ocean. But they're not living in
now
the
that you say that, I'm looking at because so for anyone listening that doesn't know, we watched this in black and white because this is the black and white era of Doctor Who. But in the color version, I'm looking at like the guards and like, I don't know if they're all priests, but the people who attend like the executions and whatever, they have gray skin.
Yeah.
So they're very clearly like, even though the fish people are a separate group of people, they definitely seem to have the like artistic direction of like the Atlanteans are, at the very least, they're like the, you know, they're Underdark people, right? They're like, they've evolved to live without the sun or something.
Yeah. Which is kind of funny because technically that would just mean they would be even paler than normal rather than being like sort of greeny gray skin. But yeah, it's just like it's an odd choice in that regard. As far as like positives go, they really did up, like, this is definitely a story where like, yeah, the fish people by default look way better in this, even with the relatively cheap animation and the statue of, oh wow, I'm blanking. They say
Cthulhu.
They say the name of their goddess all the damn time, and I'm already blanked on it.
It starts with an A.
Um,
Amdo.
Amdo, that's it. Yeah, like the statue for Amdo is like
In animation,
way
it's
better.
Cthulhu.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's an interesting take, and it's like it like I generally like it because it feels like a what they probably would have done if they had the money. Like whereas some I think go a bit too over the top and extravagant. This feels like it's like, yeah, if they had the money, they probably would have done something like that. Like that's relatively doable if you like, even if you just kind of made it a miniature that you comped in. But even then, a miniature that detail probably would have cost a lot back then. So, but like, yeah, that's something I could see them having done if they had the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, animation wise,
Did the guards have Power Ranger or like yeah? Did everyone have Power Ranger costumes in the? Or I doubt they did.
honestly, I think they were vaguely like that. They probably did slightly change it. Although that's one other change that I was a bit iffy on. Zaroff having his own branded sort of high tech looking gun. It's literally just an old fashioned pistol in the surviving
Right.
episode. Like, I get it, he's a scientist, but like, come on. He didn't have a high tech gun. It was a very old fashioned looking pistol. Like, a fairly small thing, too. It looked like it wasn't even contemporary from when he was supposed to have disappeared. It looked older than that. It might have just been a gun prop that they happen to have lying around.
Right.
As opposed to, yeah, this could be a gun that you could have bought in the 60s. uh
Anything else?
uh I think that's about it.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I'll start off with the pros, and yeah, I definitely I like so yeah things like the fish people, like the a lot of the and this is probably also partially for budget, but a lot of the set design and artistic design and makeup design, it's very 60s coded in the original, and by 60s coded, what I mean is theater coded.
Yeah.
Like this is very like it's very much like the Web Planet, and it's like yeah, this would be groundbreaking if you were to see it on Broadway.
Yeah.
But it's really like if you're to compare it to like Star Trek, it very clearly looks outdated in the year that it aired.
Yeah.
It's just working from two very different standpoints. So the animation does a really good job of like, no, these are actually fish people. They're not people in they're not people in Broadway costumes. Things like that. And yeah, like you mentioned, like the sets and stuff are really good. But I gotta say, like after watching, the surviving episodes compared to the animation, well, another pro is that obviously this is very well lit. You can see what's happening a lot easier. But at least in the black and white, seeing what you see what's happening because it's well lit, but you don't see what's happening because there's so much less detail. Like on all of these animations, Polly's face is so static during scenes when like in the real live action she's acting her ass off, but in the like she looks like a really wooden actor in the animations.
Right.
And it's some of the faces they do a better job than others. I feel like every animation that the BBC Studios team does for the Second Doctor, there's at least one character whose face just looks like a skull. Like the Doctor has a decent amount of detail. Zaroff has a decent amount of detail. But yeah, the other scientist, like he just looks like he's wearing a skull mask. The leader of the leader of Atlantis, like I'm pretty sure there's no detail to his face. But even like like the expression on people's faces, some of them like probably the more detailed ones emote a lot better. The less detailed ones, they really don't.
Yeah.
But also, like, I thought that they were mostly like keeping true to things, other than intentional changes or scenes that they just were like, we're gonna throw this out.
Mm.
But there were scenes that really had like really, really good and interesting angles and like,
Mm.
camera work in the surviving episodes. And it's very clear they didn't even try to mimic that at all in the animation.
Yeah.
It's like they took the the surviving audio, they took the script, and they pretty much threw, and maybe some costume
Mm.
information, but they didn't stick to that. That wasn't like, we have to stick to the same costumes, because we just discussed many
Yeah.
ways that they didn't.
Mm.
They took that bit of information, and I think they just kind of completely made something new without looking at the original at all, because
Mm.
otherwise the other option is they were just like, well, it's going to cost $100 to animate all of these like angles and the
Yeah.
camera work that they did here, and we only have $50, so we're going to do we're going to do it that way.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing if they did, but I mean, that would make sense in the sense of, well, clearly BBC Studios is doing a lot more of this animation now compared to like when we just had just telesnaps. So
Yeah.
like, as much as like I criticize it, I understand why somebody might have made that decision.
Yeah. And like in hindsight, one thing I did forget to mention is something that I noticed, which I have to believe was purely both budget and probably it just would have been way too hard to wrangle one, is in the surviving episodes, he says he has an octopus, but we never see it. And I have to believe that's because wrangling an octopus would not have been easy and not have been cheap. So the animation is going, well, all we've got to
It
do is animate
absolutely
an
would have been.
octopus. So
It absolutely would have been a puppet, and this is
yeah.
60s BBC, so it would not have been a good puppet.
Yeah, especially since it had to be underwater as well.
Right. I mean,
Um,
unless it was like, we're gonna see two tentacles, maybe
yeah.
that would have been halfway decent, but they would have been obvious
Mm,
puppets.
yeah, because like in the in the tank that he has, from what I can remember in the surviving episodes when he goes up to it, we see fish, but
Mm-hmm.
no octopus. So either the octopus was supposed to be kept somewhere else, or I don't know what. So they just changed the fish out with the octopus, and it we don't have the final episode to really compare it to because like there's only like one shot from that like scene where he's trying to grab at the thing and not get it.
Imagine if the
Um,
finale was Zaroff being strangled by an octopus.
yeah. Um, but
But
like,
yes, 60s BBC could not have pulled that off convincingly.
yeah. So I assume the octopus like looking like it's gonna press down the thing and just going, screw this, I'm out. Like I have to believe that was probably a touch that they added. Because they had no clue what happened there. So it's like, well, let's just have the octopus like seem like it's gonna help him maybe, but then just leave.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I guess speaking of their ruler as well, since you brought him up, not only does he also have the big bushy eyebrows in the surviving, he also has hair. Whereas in the animated, he's bald, which is an interesting choice.
Right.
I mean, to be
Yeah,
fair,
I would really like to see, like, we didn't have time to do this ourselves, but like,
mm,
I would really like to see, like, a 20-minute YouTube video just comparing the animation to the live action of
mm,
like this episode and maybe some others, but like, there's a lot of changes here that would be
mm,
worth analyzing, even in
yeah,
just this story.
yeah, and it is one of those things of like I can only be so mean because it really is a matter of the BBC basically gave them bugger all money and went, here, do it. So it's like if they had more money, they could probably have made it work, but yeah, this is probably a very small team working on a shoestring budget, so I can't really fault them too much, so much as just be annoyed that the BBC didn't give them more money.
This was 2023.
Mm-hmm. Like,
Yeah.
they had... Oh, I almost kind of wish I had a camera so I could show it, but like the version I have of it is a fucking steelbook case. You did a steelbook case for the Underwater Menace, but you couldn't give them more money for the animation budget.
Right. I mean, I don't know how much this is true. Like, I remember Rand always said that, like, the way it typically used to work was Doctor Who brought in the money and then the BBC News spent it all. So I don't know if that's true at all with these DVDs of classic episodes, but if so, that would explain some budget crunch.
Okay, actually, I went back and checked just to be sure, but no, I don't have the steelbook case, but I know that there is one that they made for it.
Oh, okay.
The interesting thing, though, I guess for the sake of bringing it up anywhere, this is also the only one so far, I'm pretty sure, where the Blu-ray case, and I'm assuming the DVD case, are flippable to a case that resembles how the classic stories would normally be released. Like how the old covers used to look, rather than the flashy new cover.
Do they have the like modern logo, old logo thing going on as well, like Big Finish sometimes does?
Just went and grabbed it. The flip cover has the old one that they used to use for these kinds of DVD releases. The new one, oddly, like in the when you actually put the Blu-ray in, it comes up with the modern logo. Although I'm already forgetting if it is like the RTD 2.0 era logo, or if they were like so behind that this was technically the Chibnall logo. But the thing on the cover itself is literally just the words Doctor Who, and the word Who is kind of like sort of like in like a generic font. Yeah, fairly. Like it's just kind of, it's not a logo. It's less a logo and more
not like the Jodie Whittaker logo Doctor Who at all.
Not sure why, but oh well. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got outside of potentially stuff coming up for scenes and or overalls and stuff for the actual review itself. Or is there anything that I was missing? What else? God. Knowing me, there's gonna be something.
What happened?
I think that... Oh no, like I was thinking if there was any other differences. I guess the only other thing I could think of kind of lumps into your thing were like some of the sort of, I guess, acting choices with the animation. So sometimes, yeah, it's like very hamstrung by their budget. Like I don't want to bring it up as a best worst scene thing, so I guess I'll bring it up here of like the Nothing in the World Can Stop Me Now is like so much better in live action than it is in thing, because because it's just like right up in his face, and he has this like manic smile on his face as he's shouting it.
But funny thing is, you mentioned like the gun changing from the original to the animation.
Mm.
The gun changed in the original live action between episodes 3 and 4 as well, according to TARDIS.
That wouldn't
So I
shock
don't know if they
me.
lost. I don't know if they lost the prop or what.
All I can think of with that is that, from what I can remember, and it was a complaint that I brought up in the previous, is that clearly they used two different takes. Like the opening of episode 4 is clearly a different take from the ending of episode 3. Probably because it's got to be a take that keeps going. To where like his delivery of the line "Nothing in the world can stop me now" is a different, worse delivery in the telesnap version, which they rectified for this. Actually, but yeah, I think that's all I've really got.
All right, so let's move on to what we like. And yeah, the downside of this 2-person podcast thing is I don't get chances to like stop talking for a couple minutes and have a snack or step away to refill a drink without being super obvious about it.
I mean, if you want,
and
I
my
can.
throat tends to hate me.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can handle reading Aaron's notes.
I'll go ahead. So, what Aaron liked is that although he wasn't supposed to be in the serial, which I don't remember necessarily if that's true or not, but I'll take her word at it. Jamie fits in well with an energetic performance by Fraser Hines and snappy dialogue. His parts would have seemed like extra padding regardless of whether he or Polly or Ben were in them, but makes them feel less like passing and more like extra adventures, such as the cave sequence.
What she'd be referring to there is that Jamie was never supposed to be a companion at first, and they had to like, they kind of reshot his ending to have him leave on the TARDIS, which is why, I think is part of why Ben and Polly leave, because just suddenly they had a lot less dialogue, so the dialogue had to be tweaked to fit Jamie in.
But yeah, I'm wondering if how that affected into the writing of this story. But I mean, yeah, it's Fraser Hines. Like, I wouldn't expect anything less.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because, like, in the moon base, he feels more like the new guy than he does here, I think. And that's maybe because the moon base is on the fucking moon. And this is at least, like, in caves and shit. Like, it's a sci-fi adventure, but it's a sci-fi adventure that's down to earth.
Yeah.
On the moon base, he's just like, what's this? What's this? There's moon dust everywhere. What did you like about this serial?
I mean, I guess to go into it, because it's not, because of the way it's animated, I wouldn't bring this up in the scenes, and I did kind of allude to it before, but I will say that they made a change that I really liked, and that was simply, instead of having the episode 4 delivery of the "Nothing in the world can stop me now" line, they just reused the take from the cliffhanger of episode 3 and like edited that delivery into it. And I was just like, oh, thank God. Because that was like a big gripe that I had when we covered the telesnap and surviving episodes. Like, that, it was just such a weaker delivery.
Wait, were you here for that? Because I don't have a score for you. If so, did I ignore your score?
Because I think, like, originally, because there was a DVD for it, I was like, oh, so this must be surviving, I guess, or mostly. And then
I don't have a score for you from that.
Oh.
Unless I deleted it. Let me see what season that was in. It's possible that I screwed up, because that's always possible. 2019 Underwater Menace and oh yep, no, you gave it a 3.0. Oh, there was like XXXXX 3.0 XXX. So I must have stopped. I must have just not looked for it, your score. Okay. I'll go add it in then. And especially since that up until then you were just like telesnaps. Nah, call me next week.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that was one where I was like, well, this did get a DVD release, so screw it, why not? I guess I probably thought there was less, like it wasn't half there, half missing. So I was like, why not? I think it was like most of the other ones we were doing then were like either entirely missing or there was like one episode. So for the rest of those I pieced out, but for this one I came in for
Got
it.
you. And yeah, so I have the average wrong too, so I'll fix that. Oh no, I had the average right. Okay, so I had the average right. I just didn't include you. What did I just? I just put you in the wrong. Okay. Where were we? So you had just said what you like about the story.
Mm-hmm.
And what did I like? Like I gave this a very positive rating the first time, so I feel like that should stand out to me. But maybe I probably watched it more rushed this time and was more like I was more critical because I was watching like I watched 2 animated episodes and 2 live action episodes and then 2 animated episodes. So I spent a lot of time like, wow, this is this is better, this is worse, comparing them.
Mm.
I mean, since I'm usually very critical of Ben and Polly, I'll say, and I mean, I think in the last episode they weren't here. I feel like the last time we talked about them, I was less critical than I normally am, but maybe not because I remember criticizing them recently too. But like, I feel like Ben and Polly were kind of well used here. Not like it may be kind of to the point of like, yeah, there's whenever you have 3 companions, you're kind of straining the amount of dialogue. But I feel like, yeah, the companions, that this kind of touches on what Aaron said. Like, the companions were kind of balanced. You have Ben and Jamie doing complementing but somewhat overlapping but complementary things. I wasn't annoyed by them at all, other than the fact that I was like, oh wow, this like acting is like actual acting in the live action version, and it's just kind of sitting there as a mannequin in the animated version. But yeah, I guess as someone who tends to criticize Ben and Polly, I would say they're the companions seemed to be pretty good here. And of course, to add on to what Aaron said, of course, Jamie is always, he's always amazing. So there's no surprise there. What we disliked. So Aaron said, and I have a feeling this is 4 completely separate things, but
it effectively is.
Didn't volcanoes produce poisonous gases instead of oxygen? I think that's true. There might be a mixture of both. There might be a mixture of like, various different types of gases of various weights. Typical mad scientist story, not a lot of nuance to the mad scientist. Other enemies are simply zealous. The assistants are just as big blind followers as the Atlantis priests. The setting is limited, so everyone winds up running around the same statue instead of corridors. Polly didn't have much to do except wear an exotic outfit and run around.
Yeah, like mine effectively is an extension of that last one that Aaron had of just like I usually really like Polly, and she has moments in there, like the bit where she's demonstrates that she can speak varying languages, but then most of what she's doing is basically being a damsel. Outside of like 1 or 2 instances.
That scene, Ben was like, Polly, you speak foreign. Like, really, Ben?
I mean, working class guy in the 60s, not really a surprise.
Like, that's something you would expect, like, people would, like, that would be like a European stereotype of an American. But then again, I've looked at maps, and the UK is actually, like, on a lot of stuff that people criticize the US for, the UK is, like, almost as bad. So
Yeah.
fair game there.
Mm.
Like, we distract from how the UK is.
um but yeah, like it's one of those instances where it feels like, I mean, to be fair, I could see a lot of what Polly goes through happening regardless of whether Jamie was there or not. But by virtue of the fact that you've got Jamie there, like it, most of what Polly is doing is getting captured, escaping, and getting captured again. Or like hiding from people so she's not captured, which given the fact that Ben would just be the only one interacting with those two that they find that they interact with them in the mines. I almost wonder if those characters suffered slightly from uh the fact that there was an additional companion in some way, by virtue of, I don't think we would have necessarily had the scene where like Jamie's hanging on for dear life on the side of a cliff or what have you, unless it was supposed to be like, you know, because I also don't know, I wonder how they would have split up, unless it was just that they were all supposed to be going together and suddenly, hey, where'd that guy go? And then they had to rescue him instead, I guess. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah. I mean, you have three companions and three pseudo companions in this.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, the doc. Shoot, Ben and Jamie have their own two companions. Polly has a companion, and the Doctor has a companion. So, very yeah, decent sized cast for a 4-parter.
Mm.
And yeah, I feel like I've been picking apart aspects of the animation the whole time. So I'm probably gonna say that just like the animation, the color seems to add some detail that the black and white is lacking, but especially the black and white version, the animation is just really lacking detail to the point of, like, I know some of the animation we've seen had too much detail and that was distracting. But this, I think, a lot of time is the opposite, where the animation, rather than like overly trying to mimic the actors or something, like the animation hurts the acting because it makes it feel like people are not emoting and such. And that I think is the biggest drawback of the story.
Yeah, it's almost one of those things where like you kind of wish whatever budget they'd put towards doing a version in color, they just put towards like improving the animation.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's also like the color, like if you're doing your shading by like different shades of tan, then I could see that, like, oh yeah, so we're not going to add in. But I mean, I kind of wish, if they did, and I'm not necessarily sure that they did that because I didn't watch the color. But like, if they did do their shading by like different skin tones, like when people were acting, then I wish you saw that more in like the black and white shadows, if so. And I kind of got that impression from some of the still images, but still images can be very misleading. So
Yeah.
all right, so favorite scenes. Aaron says, the doctor throws a test tube to distract the assistant during a science demonstration. The doctor, so this is definitely another scene. The doctor's demonstration of the pot boiling and exploding for the chief. Excellent visual explanation compared to trying to verbally describe what is going to happen. Also lends a sense of urgency to the situation. And I agree, like, especially for a kid show, like, that the target audience is still mostly kids. I think that's really valuable. Ben laughing at Polly as she explains how they wanted to turn her into a fish. Felt like a brother making fun of a sister. The fish person's call to rebellion via interpreted dance looks much better animated. And blimey, look at him. He's not normal, is he? And I didn't even try to do the accent because it would have,
Yeah.
knowing me, it would have sounded like it would have accidentally sounded like Apu, because that's what happens when I try to do an English accent for some reason. So I didn't even try. But yeah, pretend I had the proper voice.
Hmm. Oh, I'm trying to remember what mine was now. I guess just for like the comedy of it. I forget what mine was last time, but it might have been that nothing in the world is going to stop me now thing. But given the animation in this version, it's like eh. So I think I'll go for like the them tricking the Atlantean priests and that to bow down and like no one can look, no peeking. Yeah. And then like, oh, it's a miracle. He's just like she's just taken them. Oh, it's like
the priest goes to look up. They're like, no looking. We're following heads on desk rules.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that scene as well. Actually, what's the one that I mentioned that I found hilarious? Oh, this was really minor, but it was such a perfect second Doctor joke. Where he's like, women and children last. Okay, Polly, you go ahead.
Yeah.
The doctor has no illusions of being a responsible adult.
Yeah. I'm gonna guess like one that I think works in both, despite the fact that the outfit's like less silly in animation as it is in live action. Is I've already forgotten his name, but like the priest who helps the doctor out when he gives him the temple garb to wear, and the doctor's like, "Ooh, may I?" And then he's like, how do I look? What? Nothing. They're just like wanting to get a compliment, and the temple priest just like has no idea what's like what. So the doctor just kind of has to like be frumpy.
Mm-hmm. Least favorite scene, Erin says she doesn't have one. She says, despite this being a more infamous serial, at least from what she's heard, she enjoyed the animated remake and didn't have a least favorite scene. I think our rating was just above a 3.0 average. There's a 3.20 average with the telesnaps. So there definitely was a variety of scores below 3 and scores above 3. But I did not rewatch that review to see how infamous we felt it was. But yeah, it definitely was not the lowest rated Telesnap episode either. What's your least favorite scene?
Ooh. Let's see. Damn. Like, it is kind of funny because some of them it's like, God, how? Oh, you know what? I meant to bring this up at some point, so I'll use this as an excuse. The first conversation, I think, like proper conversation between the doctor and Ara just cuts off randomly. And I'm like, is that a matter of there not being any surviving audio for that section, so they just had to cut immediately to the next scene?
Maybe.
Or was that just the editor screwing up in the original and they had to like... Because because I forget. Because I forget if that's in episode... Because if it is in episode 1, which I think it might have been, then there I feel like there are definitely some... even some telesnaps stuff where they have to bring up text and like audio descriptive to be like, and this is now happening. Because like I think even the audio was lost of certain bits. But it's just such a jarring, because like clearly this conversation is going to keep going. So if that is an intentional editing choice that was made, it's a very bad editing choice, because it doesn't feel like... Because like Doctor Who has done things where it's like, okay, we're going to continue this conversation off screen and cut to the next scene, but it did not feel like that. It felt like the conversation just got cut off.
So this is the conversation when he gives the note to her, or after that?
I think it's the one with him giving a note to her. I feel like it's definitely the first episode, but she's kind of protesting, I think, or something, and then it just cuts off. And I'm like, wait, what? Where's the rest of the... This feels like this dialogue should keep going for at least another line or two, but it just kind of cuts. So yeah, it's like, it's kind of nitpicky in the sense that like, I don't know if this is an intentional editing choice or just the audio that they have was so garbled or just not there that they had to just cut. But if it was...
They weren't cut off, but they weren't cut off by the guards.
No, it just cuts to the next scene.
Okay.
They just...
So it's a full scene transition, okay.
Yeah, it's just like... Yeah, they're just kind of talking and she's in the middle of saying something and then just immediately gets cut off because they've transitioned to a different scene. It's like... Again, like... It's kind of nitpicky in the sense that I don't know if that's an intentional editing choice or if that's just the audio for the rest of that conversation doesn't exist anymore.
Probably the latter, but
or just sense. Was like, or I guess because of how it would have been salvaged if it was really garbled. So it was unusable, but yeah, so it's... I bring it up here to bring it up at all, but it is just a weird moment. Because it feels like such a jarring edit.
And I guess I'll bring up two scenes, and I'm like, I don't feel like they're both kind of like milk toast. Like they're not like, oh my god, this scene really annoys me, but it's like it's kind of worth mentioning. One is that like the scene with them leaving the mines, where he's like, no, you two stay because you're too new. Basically, like, I don't trust you to go over there. And then they're like, okay, we're just going to leave anyway. And like, nobody sees them, stops them, calls the alarm. They just go. Like, that seems like a weird plot. Like, I wonder if there's a cut scene that they cut for time or something about like actually having consequences. Because it seems really weird. You have a whole scene of them being told, fuck no, you're not going anywhere. And then they just go.
Yeah, like, for the life of me, I think there is like, and it is kind of a problem with this story in some bits, that I think there is a throwaway line to say that like they're aware of the fact that they've gone missing, but it's just kind of written off as, we'll find them. Very quickly. So it's like a very like blink and you'll miss it kind of... They kind of maybe mention that they know that they've gone missing.
You'd think somebody would try to stop them.
Yeah. Because like I think it's also another one of those animation versus live action differences where it's a very cramped cavern that they're in, a cave that they're in in the mine.
Yeah,
And like,
I've noticed all the scenes are a lot more close up in the live action than the
yeah,
animated for that reason.
yeah. And like, so, and there's like, I think there's more workers, or at least because it's a smaller space, the few extras they have, like, kind of obscure them leaving a bit better. And the implication with that throwaway line by Jamie saying, "Thanks, fellas," seems to imply that the others are like kind of in on it, or at least are aware of what's going on and not saying anything.
Right. Yeah, I was looking at that like, okay, like you're just like telling these strangers that like that they basically are your accomplices. And I'm like, did they want to be his accomplices?
I actually think what's worse about that is I'm pretty sure on the live action, the like, I don't know, whatever, like warden, whatever the hell in charge of them, uh has like, I'm pretty sure he's fully off screen when Jamie's finally like, "Thanks, fellas," and ducks off. Whereas in the animation, he's still walking away, and Jamie's like, "Thanks, fellas," and leaves. And I'm like,
yes.
how did he not immediately turn around and notice?
In the animation, they're having these conversations uncomfortably close to the guards.
Yeah.
And the other scene I wanted to bring up, and I understand, I think I understand what they were going for. This is where I don't know which is which, but the two like working class miner guys, they're but one of them is just like, oh, they're not even people, they're sardines. And he's like mocking them. And I'm just like, and you want them to work with, and I think the point is he's like trying to get them all to come over to him so they all hear what he has to say. But like, it was like, imagine if you're trying to be like, okay, we need some working class solidarity. I'm going to try to get these, Muslims to help in. And then you come over and you start saying like these anti-Muslim slurs to them until they all start throwing rocks at you. And you're like, all right, now all of you idiots, stop throwing rocks and listen to what I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to keep throwing rocks at you.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely.
And that was just to pick a group at random. Like, there's no connection between Muslims and fish people, but they're just
like that definitely felt like maybe someone probably thought, this probably needs further drafts, but we don't have the time or money. So, oh well.
All right. So on to final thoughts. So what Erin says is this is probably her favorite of the animated remakes so far. The animation is fluid, limited rotoscoping is used for running and walking sequences. Designs are consistent, exotic, and interesting. Okay. And your final thoughts.
Yeah, for me, it's like, this is definitely, like with the Celestial Toymaker, this is one that is, for all the issues I have with some of the, like, some very specific tweaks made, and also the animation being so cheap, there's only so much they can do with the facial acting and stuff. That aside, it's nice to just have a version of this that I can fully watch instead of, like the first and final episode missing. Especially like the final episode is absolutely salvaged by the fact that the "Nothing in the world can stop me now" line is reused from the cliffhanger of episode 3 instead of the episode 4 opening delivery of the line from the original. And also the just generally being able to see anything beyond a certain point, because I'm pretty sure like one of the last telesnap images that it just stays on for the rest of the thing is just like Zaroff drowning, effectively, or like holding on to the bars and that, and it's just stuck on that for like, if not the rest of the episode, a good chunk. And it's like there's no real dialogue saying what's going on. It's just him in there as it's flooding with water. So it's like, what the fuck's going on? Whereas this, you can actually see what's going on.
Right, yeah.
So it's a massive upgrade in that respect. And there are plenty
climaxes are very awful until it snaps.
yeah. So it is a thing of like, I'll take, I wish it was better, but I'll take what I can get. And it does bring this story up. Like, I feel like in hindsight, a lot of what made my score what it was, and my score wasn't like astronomically low, but what brought it down was less like the story itself, because the story on paper is fairly interesting. It's more like the budget wasn't there to really meet what they wanted. And some of the stuff is a bit wonky, but that aside, the animation brings this story up a bit. Definitely. Like, it's, again, it's very fitting to cover the Celestial Toymaker and then this, because they are two stories that are absolutely elevated by both the animation and just in this case more so just being able to
being
see.
visible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's on to me, and I was one of the higher ratings initially. And honestly, I feel like years of like seeing more Doctor Who and being more critical kind of causes me to lower the rating, because it's just like the writing doesn't feel like, again, I didn't go back and re-listen to the original review, but it's like the writing doesn't feel as good to me as I think I probably felt it was at the time. Like, the whole plot revolving around the food, it seems a little weird in the fact that, like, this is, modern day at the time Earth, when it's just like, you can just, it's not that hard to get food out of the ocean. Like, I don't like seafood, algae exists, fish exist. I'm not entirely sure what's so special about their food that they, you can smoke fish and store it, but they can't. They have no stores of food whatsoever. Like, you can grow algae in hydroponic farms. They have no stores of food. I do not. Like, this makes a lot more sense if it's on an alien world than if it's in a sunken continent. Things like, there's that, and also the fact that I kind of alluded to this during the summary, but it's like, parts of this just feels like a lesser version of Power of the Daleks. Like, the whole, like, I'm in charge now, and I was like, we just saw this, and it's not like it can never happen multiple times, but doing it, two stories later it's not a great call. And I don't know if it's fair to judge based on, like, oh, this is 2 stories after Power of the Daleks. But it's like, my gut reaction is, it's just like if we were to watch Victory of the Daleks right now, I'd be like, oh yeah, you're doing Power of the Daleks, but worse. Again, it's not to say this is awful. I definitely, like, don't feel like the writing is as strong as I probably felt it was in 2019. This is partially because, like, seeing the live action episodes and the animated episodes, that just, like, I mean, I don't want to harp on it because I've mentioned it multiple times. Certain things just feel so much less effective. And I think that kind of put me in that sort of, like, pessimistic mind state where it's like, certain things, like, if I was, if I watched this, only the animated stuff, on a day that I had a really, lots of free time and something good had happened to me, I would have been like, oh yeah, that's really great. But instead I watched alternating between animated and live action on the same day that we're reviewing it, when I was kind of short on time. So it's like, that's not to say that, like, it ruins it, but it's like, it definitely colors the interpretation, right? That's why a lot of my reviews when I was stressed, when I was you can probably track when I was stressed out from school by following the trajectory, like the amount that my reviews differ from the average.
Mm.
Because just sometimes you're feeling more pessimistic and you view the same things a different way. And like I'm not like super like in a bad mood today, but I definitely viewed some things in a more negative light than I might have if I just slightly changed the circumstances a little bit.
Mm.
That was a lot of words to not say a whole lot about this story. Let's go on to the ratings. So first off, those who are not with us, Rand gave this a 2.5. Tim gave this a 4.0. Rand and Matt, I think, have both consistently through the years been very like willing to watch telesnaps, but also consistently penalizing telesnap episodes. Matt also gave this a 2.5. And our original average, I might have mentioned this, our average was a 3.20 between the five of us on the panel. So now we're adding Aaron, and then you and I have our chance to revisit our ratings.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron gives this version a 4.0. And also, I forgot to do a taking the retcon for last week. So Erin had done her review but forgotten to give us a rating. She gave the Celestial Toymaker a 4.0, which in a panel of 5 increases the average from a 2.50 to a 2.75. This story, she also gives a 4.0. Alex, what's your rating?
Despite
I've been ignoring Twitch chat. Hopefully, it hasn't been it has not been active.
Even despite the issues, I think just being able to see the whole thing animated is just enough for me to agree with Aaron, and I'll bump this up to a 4, but I could definitely not justify going higher.
Okay, so an increase from 3.0 to 4.0. And I'm kind of looking at this as I gave it a 4.0 before, and I'm just maybe you could make the argument like I could see a 3.75. I'm just not feeling a 4.0 today. So I'm gonna say 3.5. Like 3.75 would be perfect if we did that, but we don't do that. We've never done that. So it's a 3.5. So I'm lowering the rating not because I think it's awful, but just because I don't think the script itself really merited a 4.0. So that brings our average from a 3.20 to a 3.42. Let's see where that puts it on rankings. So 3.42 places this as 348 or 349, or I guess 350 out of, I scroll down too far, out of 483 things reviewed. It is on par with The Long Game and The Android Invasion. It is not as good as Empire of Death, Amy's Choice, Fugitive of the Jadoon, The Saranga Conundrum, Planet of the Dead, The Eaters of Light, The Savages, Planet of the Ood, 42, City of Death. Now that does come off probably, comparing it to those stories, I would say maybe it is a little harsh. But I think I'm not going to give it a higher rating than that just because Matt, Tim, and Ren bring it down because they, of course, did not watch the animated version. It is better than The Five Doctors, The Mythmakers, The Androids of Terra, The Curse of Peladon, Silver Nemesis, The Crusade, The Abominable Snowman, Fort to Doomsday, The Happiness Patrol, and that's it for 3.38. All right, so that is all we have to say about The Underwater Menace. And hopefully, now that I've actually seen it in non-telesnaps, I'll remember which story with the underwater name is referring to The Underwater Menace. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode. If you've watched it, don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far. Subscribe on YouTube to get our exports, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Especially because next time, Doctor Who returns to the screen with Stephen Moffat's alleged final episode, with Joy to the World, written by Stephen Moffat and starring Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, and Nicola, I think it's Coughlin, it might be Coughlin, as Joy Almondo. And it's possible it'll be at a different time, depending if that's when everybody's schedules line up. I really want to make sure we have a panel of at least 3 people for next time, so we'll see what happens. We'll see you then.